Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I have my crumb basket here and I want to do some crumb piecing today. So I have a specific idea about what I want to do with the crumb units that I create that I think is going to be super cool. So let me show you what I'm thinking. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of look through my bin here and pick out the pieces that I think will go well with this project. And I really want pieces that are either bright, well they don't necessarily have to be bright, but I don't want them too dark. This is probably too dark. This is probably too dark because I want a good amount of contrast. This is not a crumb, these are scraps. These little pieces obviously are crumbs. I don't want anything too dark because I want there to be contrast between the crumb blocks I'm creating and the units that I will be attaching them to. So this one is probably too dark here. And I will be using a mixture here of crumbs and scraps. Once I have a couple pieces pulled, this is a good one, and this one is a good one. Once I have a couple pieces pulled, I will iron these out and start pairing them up. I'll sew two pieces together and kind of decide which two to sew together based on size. So for example, this pink one might go well with this yellow one. They're kind of the same size. I'm going to start with these pairs here. As you can see, I just put the ones that were of similar size. I didn't make any cuts yet. I will sew these right sides together, 1/4 inch seam, and then iron, give each one a really good iron. I'll do that for all of these pairs. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim my pairs here so that I can add on and make these small units bigger. This piece I can now add on to something else. And this piece I can either combine, let's say maybe with another pair like this. Could add this on. And to do that, what you would do is just make this a straight line. And then put these right sides together, just like that. So you can either put two pairs together or you can put an additional third piece onto your pairs. So I could put another piece, kind of a triangle piece shape here. This one I may add just a long strip right along here. In addition to that, once I've trimmed my pieces and decided if I'm adding on to these pieces or combining two of them together, I will then continue to make duplicates. So I'll continue to pull these scraps and put singles together to make more doubles. Here I've created a bunch of units. As you can see, for this one, I started with this fabric, added on the orange, then the brown, and attached this unit to this unit. So I'm just gonna keep going that way. You know, I created these three pieces together and then added this little tab at the end. I'm gonna keep going. I want my pieces to expand, continuing to, you know, for example, I could put these pieces together, these two here, and then cut a straight line and then add something onto the bottom or the top or the left or the right. So combining and growing my units is the goal. I now have some pretty solid sized pieces here, and what I'd like to do is go through some of these. I'm still working on making some of these other ones over here a little bit bigger. I have some of these smaller pieced units, but what I'd like to do is take some of these bigger units. I'll start with this one, and I want to try and make this into a triangle. Now, when I was piecing this, I wasn't worried about getting it into a triangle shape. I just wanted these pieces to be constructed in kind of an attractive way. So it does add a little bit of a challenge, but I think, and in addition, I'll say that to make some of these a triangle, I might need to add some pieces on. They might not be ready to totally be ready to go yet. But what I'm going to do is for each one, I'm going to kind of look at what do I want to save? What do I want to make sure it doesn't get chopped off? And for this piece, it's this little mini triangle here. I want to make sure that that mini triangle gets saved. So let me think about how I can do this. Because the most obvious way to make this a triangle would be to make my cut right here. And this would be my triangle, but then I'm losing that little piece. So what I think I'm gonna do is come down here. I'm gonna end up, I think, adding a piece. But if I make a cut here, and then I make another cut here, and another one coming down this way. Then all I need is a little piece right here to finish up my triangle. That's that one. Let's look at another one. This one here is already pretty much a triangle, and I'm gonna just chop off the bottom. But what's gonna be a little bit unexpected about this piece here is that instead of having this be the top of the triangle, which I feel would kind of be the obvious move, I'm gonna rotate it. So now this piece, so now this kind of is on the side. I think it's just a little more attractive. What I will say is all my triangles are going to be wonky, which I like. I want some of them to be kind of off kilter, some of them tall, skinny, some of them wide. They're all gonna be unique. Let's take a look at this piece. I think this one in theory might be an easy one. Let's see. And then one right across the bottom. Fun. I'm gonna keep going and do that with all of my segments here. I have all of my triangles cut. I'll quickly just show them to you one at a time. And the way that I'm showing them to you is the way that I kind of see them going. So instead of this one being like this, which is very symmetrical, I'm putting it like this, which is a little bit more kind of mountainy, I think. But any number of these, any one of these you could turn to go in a different direction. But this one is straight up and down like that. This is actually one of the first ones that I did. This one has a little bit of that butterfly fabric from the video called Cut These Butterflies or something like that I did. I also like this one this way, so I could always change my mind. And then after I show you these triangles, I'll tell you what we're gonna do next with them. And what makes these triangles so special is that they are all kind of wonky in different sizes. Now, I don't have any that are teeny, teeny, tiny or that are enormous. I tried to keep them all about, there's a lot going on in this one. This one is one of my favorites. I tried to keep them all relatively in the same scope of size. And then just using those bright colors. Now, not all the colors are bright, like that. There's a gray there, and here is a kind of tan here. But the important thing is to stay away from the darks. Like this green is almost a little bit too dark, but I think since I surrounded it in the light colors, it should be okay for this project. And then as you can see, some of them are really simple, like this one's only using 4 pieces, and then other ones are more complex. I used this fabric a lot. This fabric is actually a Christmas fabric, but I think in this case, it doesn't read Christmassy and it works really well. I only have 2 more. This one's more pastel-y. And then this one is those really bold colors again. So what to do next? I have pulled a bunch of dark blues that all kind of read the same. This one has a little dirt on it. They all kind of have this dark blue background and then something with kind of white or cream going on top. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just take one of these fabrics and I'm going to add a piece of blue, a large piece of blue to the right-hand side, and then trim and cut, and a piece of blue to the left-hand side, leaving the bottom as is. To do this, I'm cutting bigger pieces than I think that I need. I put my triangle on top, and then I put my ruler a little bit past where I think it hits, and cut a nice long piece. Now you can use scraps and kind of sew pieces together, but this is already a very scrappy project, so I feel at this point using yardage is the way to go. So I'm going to kind of put this in the middle, and I'm going to cut this right down here. This is all estimating. I have no exact measurements here. So now what I'll do is sew right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and give it a nice press. At that point, I'll trim this to be a nice straight line. Because this is non-directional fabric, I can take the other piece that I used and then sew it to this side. Once that's sewn on, I'll cut a nice straight line right along the bottom. As you can see here, all of my triangles are surrounded on two sides by that dark blue fabric. I have 5 rows. Each row has 4 triangles in it. I have mixed feelings about how this is looking at this point, but I think it still has a lot of potential. So what I'm going to do next is I want to make each row the same height. So I'll need to add a little bit on top of this triangle and a little bit on top of that one. And then once they're the same height, I can attach those 4 pieces together to be one long strip. And I'll do that for each one of my rows. Now I'm not gonna or the rows together, I'm not going to just attach the columns directly together. I do wanna put something in between. I need to think about what makes sense, what that something would be. All of my units are now sewn together into these strips. I think they're pretty interesting. Now I'm experimenting with some design elements. So up here you can see I have this orange stripe separating the top 2 rows. Here's a closer look of that. And then right underneath it, you can see I just put those 2 rows right up against each other with nothing in between them. I think they do need something in between each row, but I'm not sure that orange stripe is exactly right. It might not be the best choice. Let me look at some other options. Here are 2 more options. So that is the orange stripe that we started with. I added in this red down here and then this kind of diamond checkerboard, white and black checkerboard. I think that the checkerboard is my least favorite. I actually really like the red. Let me see what else I can find. I replaced the orange stripe with that kind of brownish gold fabric up there, and I actually really like it. I think it calms it down a little bit, but still adds that definition in between the rows. The red is pretty awesome. It's definitely a statement. And then I'm not really liking this this checkerboardy one down there. I think that one's out. Here are the last 2 options. So that's the same that we just saw. This is a brown that I added. It's just like a gingham. And this is more of a gold. I think what I might do is use, so these top 2 options here are both ginghams, and I might use this gold gingham in between the rows, and then maybe I'll do a little border around the whole thing of the brown gingham. I just think this one down here, this gold here, it just kind of doesn't go enough with the aesthetic of where this quilt is going. And here is the finished quilt top. As you can see, I went with the red sashing in between the rows, which I think was successful and the right choice. I'm very happy with that. Now, I kind of see these as mountains, but they could also be sailboats. You could easily make this kind of a light blue and have the sailboats resting on the water. It would be kind of cool with all the different fun colored sails. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.